Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most? And do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right. No extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
Okay, welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Matt Drouin. Matt is a partner at Oak Groves Development and a real estate investment and development firm with a special focus on value-add commercial and residential properties in Rochester, New York. Over the last 18 years, Matt has been in real estate management, brokerage, and development and grown his portfolio to 176 units of residential and commercial properties. His company's mission is in developing real estate projects that not only add value to their investors, but also put long-term community interest front and center. Matt believes that you can do well and do good in real estate developer as a real estate developer, and ultimately community-centric development boosts long-term profits for investors. So, Matt, welcome to The Wealth Flow.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited and terrified at the same time.
There you go. All right. Well, maybe we could start with kind of your background. I always like to find out, Matt, where people grew up and what eventually led them to real estate.
Excellent. I'll start with as abridged of a version as possible, but I think the background before real estate is probably will give people clues as to why it became my obsession and why it became so important to me. I grew up in a blue collar family. My father was a general laborer for Genesee Brewery. My mother was a dialysis nurse, and they owned a house in the city of Rochester. They had to move outside the city to put my brother and I in a better school district. And that's really when things changed, because I didn't know it was a term at this point in time when I was like 4 years old, but house poor, right? It was this thing that I started experiencing. And my father felt like he wasn't able to get ahead working at Genesee Brewery. And, and he was doing the most manual labors, moving kegs around, cleaning fermentation tanks and all that sort of thing. So he got his real estate license to just have a little bit of more walking around money, because my parents were living paycheck to paycheck. And it led to a great amount of strain on the relationship. And they ended up getting divorced. And I remember that, it was a traumatic experience as a child to see these, two people that were a team get split up. And the sick thing about the whole thing is they became even more financially worse when they got split up, right? My mother had to rent out the lower level of our split level. And get her, essentially get a housemate in order to make her mortgage payment. And, my dad was moving from, basement to basement around town. And it was just an awful nightmare. Right. Plus at the same time, I had this sort of inferiority complex that developed because we moved into an affluent suburb. I was having friends, that were on the 16th birthday would get like a Lexus. They'd be driving that to school. And I had an old beater that was handed down to me by my aunt, which God bless her soul, because here I was a little brat, God, you got a free car, right? But just the confluence of those factors led to me really being, I guess, kind of obsessed with, financial security was the evolution of this thing where it started, right? I just want to be secure. And when I got older, I was like, okay, I need to go to college. I need to get like a fancy Wall Street job. And I'm going to be a cigar chopping, like Gordon Gekko type. And I'm going to be a millionaire in 2 years. And, the rest is going to be history, right? I'm going to not have to worry about money ever again. And so I graduated college in 2006. There was no jobs out there. No companies were looking to hire a, kid with a B minus student from a liberal arts school with no experience. And so I had to, eat my first slice of humble pie in terms of where expectations met reality and get a part-time job as a bank teller at Chase Bank. And I couldn't stand that job. I hated it. It was like eating a poop sandwich every day. And so my dad was sick of me complaining, so he offered me the opportunity to get my real estate license and work under him because he transitioned out of working as a general laborer to being full-time real estate brokerage. And so that's where I got my first stint in real estate. He saw that I closed a couple deals. I had about $16,000 I earned in commission checks. It was really hard work, but he gave me to the end of the year to move out of the house. So I didn't like the idea of paying rent because I wasn't paying rent before. It's kind of nice living at home and that sort of thing. But I bought a 4-family property, and I closed in the property in the middle of the month. Had $1,800 in rent checks sitting in my mailbox, and it felt like it was criminal, right? Because I knew how hard I had to work in order to earn $1,800 in commission checks selling like grinder city properties in like D neighborhoods in order to do that for $40,000. So that's where I got bit by the bug, and where I kind of like understood what like passive income or residual income. Let's not call it passive. Let's call it passive-ish income, because I'm still an operator, right? So, but that's really where I got bit by the bug, and I got obsessed with scaling that business. After both my parents died in my 20s due to health reasons, I really got obsessed about earning financial independence. So, transforming from financial security to financial independence. And I made the goal for myself to become financially independent by the time I was 40 years old. I was able to achieve that by the time of 33. And I just scaled from there. I've been buying and developing larger properties, commercial office building, industrial, retail, multifamily, right in my backyard in Rochester, New York, since then.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot there. How about, let's maybe go back to with your parents and them having to kind of make that decision to get you, and it sounds like was it you and your brother into a better school district?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you mentioned being house poor, and I've been there actually. I've been there before, where we had a really nice place, but that was sucking everything from an income standpoint away from us, and so. You noticed that though, as a child. I mean, were there discussions around that, like that? Hey, we're buying this house or we're renting this house in this neighborhood, in order to do this. But you could actually see your parents struggling with it.
Yeah, I mean, after we made that move, it was the first time I saw my parents just like fighting constantly. And the argument was always over my dad getting out of work at Genesee Brewery and showing houses on nights and weekends, and my mother wanted him home. And my dad was like, well, you want this lifestyle, so I have to do something to produce it, right? And it was kind of like that thing where I started to realize that, we're brought up. I mean, both my grandparents are from, not this country. They're from like rural area outside of Montreal, Quebec, and this sort of like very hard work ethic, as ingrained as like the harder you work, the better you'll get, but you have to sacrifice so much in order to do so. And that's really what led to them, getting driven apart. And it was a major aha moment. We were at my mother's funeral services. My dad was there, and he grabbed me by the shoulder, and there's a tear coming out of his eye, and he's like, "Matt, I really wish I would have worked things out with your mom." All right. So all this tumult that happened wasn't a result of like them just like, oh, now we hate each other. Okay. It was directly associated with the money thing.
Right. No, it makes sense. I mean, it's the majority of divorces, really. If you peel back the onion, it all kind of starts there. And how old were you when your parents got a divorce?
I was 6 years old, I believe, 6, 7 years old.
Okay.
So
okay.
pretty early on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like they passed. Your mom passed when you were still fairly young, a young adult at that point. When did you start working with your dad? And I guess maybe at that point your dad had stopped working at the brewery. But and was he the broker? I don't know if it's the same in from state to state. I know in Texas, I'm a broker, but I've got agents underneath me. But I know you can, some states call it a broker if it's a sales agent. So was your dad the owner of the business, or was you just working with him at a real estate company, or how did that work?
Yeah, so we were at a company called Nothago Realtors. So he didn't own the company, but he owned his job. So
okay, yeah,
yeah. So he was an associate broker there, and I was one of the agents on his team.
Okay, that's cool. So was he doing significantly better at that point with his finances?
Yeah, that's kind of the sad thing is that when you go through your parents passing early on, you're a kid and you're dealing with like the estate issues with aunts and uncles, trying to sort through the being an executrix and that sort of thing. Even knowing like my dad achieved by the time he passed away, achieved like a pretty good amount of success as a real estate agent. It took him a long time to build that business and to really get it. And for him to pass away, he was living paycheck to paycheck too, and he was always scrambling because he started this thing late. My dad was a late bloomer, and he started the journey of like putting money away for retirement kind of late in his life. And we'd have conversations. He's like, Matt, I'm gonna have to work until I die. And that actually happened, right? I mean, he was showing houses the day before he passed in the middle of the night from a heart attack, right? So
wow. Yeah.
it was. And I don't mean to talk about that to bum people out or anything like that, but it was the universe and God that was smacking me around like about the head, like, hey, you have to think about things in a different way than what you're programmed to think about. And that's the reason why I developed that obsession over it. Unfortunately, this is the external factors that led to me developing that. But hopefully it's not the same amount of trauma that somebody else has to go through to get it. But hopefully my story inspires somebody else to not have to go through what I went through to kind of get on the right train.
Yeah, for sure. And so you ended up purchasing a 4-unit and sounds like somewhat house hacked that, what they would call now, but tell me a little bit about that. You mentioned the income coming in and how it was basically paying for your living expenses. But what was the strategy there? And from tell me a little bit about how you got the loan for that. You were a real estate agent at that particular point in time. Yeah.
Yeah. I was laughing because, it wasn't an easy loan to get, being a fresh new real estate agent, with not having 2 years worth of tax returns. The strategy was, don't pay rent. That was the strategy. All right. So I looked to find, multifamily properties where I'd have enough rental income coming in from the other units to cover my mortgage, tax, insurance, like 100% of it. And that was a strategy in terms of finding properties that had that type of unit mix. The how I found the property was it was off market. It was an expired listing. This was in 2006. So like the market was still cranking, but it was for multifamily, it wasn't as popular as single family houses, that sort of thing. So this is an expired listing. I ended up just calling the seller off of that and got to walk through the property, got it under contract. I was already versed on working with clients in terms of how to fill in the blanks with our standard purchase and sale agreement. And the financing was a complete nightmare. And I am a poster child for non-conforming loans, because that's the loan that I ended up getting because I couldn't get any regular conventional financing. I had to do that. My interest rate at the time was like 8.8%. Meanwhile, my clients were locking in interest rates in like the sixes. So, but I didn't really look at it, and truth be told, how I got that loan is that, midway through underwriting, I was pre-approved. Midway through underwriting, they said, hey, we need you to have a paycheck. I was like, okay, well, you pre-approved me with what my stated income was. Why do you need to see a paycheck? So I actually had to talk my dad into hiring me as an administrative assistant, putting me on payroll with the company with the promise that when I closed on the property, that I would pay him all the money back that he paid me as an administrative assistant. So we did. So we did that. I think we're beyond the statute of limitations with this bank. Probably it's rest in peace because they were doing non-conforming loans. But
Right.
but it was like I had to do whatever it took to do that, and I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I did because it was life changing.
Yeah, for sure. It is, obviously some of those types of loans cause some problems down the road, but there were in the right situation, there is because as it can be difficult. I can remember my first couple years as an agent as well, and kept checking in with a lender friend that I'd always refer other people to.
Mhm.
Am I good enough yet? Can I get a loan yet? And then another thing that I thought was kind of just interesting, just in today's market, right? Everybody's complaining about how interest rates are, and here,
Oh,
06, 6% is, that was considered to be a fairly good rate back then, and so yeah, rates are not what they used to be, not too far back, but they're really not that bad. So
Oh, I know. It drives you nuts. And to be honest with you, I mean, I tell a lot of people they're in the commercial and income property space, like high interest rates, like this is a great environment to scoop up properties because it's the first time in my life, in my career, that I've been seeing buyers and sellers actually collaborating together to get each other what they want. And I'm seeing insanely creative deals happen out there as a result of that I've never seen before.
yeah, for sure. So tell us, Matt, a little bit more about beyond the fourplex that you ended up closing on. Obviously, that was a great proof of concept that, man, this real estate stuff works. And so from there, tell me a little bit more about your journey. Where did you go from there?
How I went from there was I was, had this plan of like, okay, if I can have this amount of cash flow per month, then I could stop trading my time for dollars. And so I thought that the methodology beyond that was just buy more 4 families, buy more 3 families, 2 families, that sort of thing. I mean, my niche was small multifamily, residential.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of block and tackled that. My second deal was a 4 family. It was a complete wreck. Couldn't get bank financing on it, even though I was in a better shape from a bankability standpoint in 2008. So I got introduced to this thing called private money. So I got a hard money loan to acquire that property, the acquisition and also the rehab. And so I was able to buy that property, rehab it, rent out all 4 units there, refinance the property, and I didn't have any money into the deal. So now at that point in time, I got bit by the bug of like, oh, I can actually scale this thing without having to sock away life savings and do this at a really slow clip by putting together creative finance deals and also partnering with other people's money as well and giving them what they want in exchange for getting what I want in alignment with that. So I just continued on doing that. It took me 11 years, 25 properties, 76 doors in order to create enough income in order to be able to walk away from my W-2. Because I left brokerage and started working for a national real estate development company as their director of operations. And so that was like my next, sort of milestone. I achieved this thing. Ultimately, I was a little bit, I wouldn't say a little bit, but very depressed that I achieved this thing. And this thing that I thought about every single day, financial independence. And I achieved it. And I was like, what's next? And I was looking over at my wife because I started this journey when I was single. I was like, well, if I want to go traveling to Europe for 2 months at a time, like my wife's not going to be able to do that if she's stuck in a high school classroom teaching math. So I always knew I wanted to do bigger deals because I knew that there were, much better financial impact. But I was under the misconception that I had to be big to go big for those first 11 years. At that point in time, I was like, I can't do this thing over again because I was like, buying several deals a year. And it's a hard work, right? It's a grind being an operator and bootstrapping this thing. So I was like, I just got to do this commercial thing. I knew I had to do it. So I just decided to, buck up and I bought a commercial office building that deal, it was $1 million. I had to raise $300,000 in capital. It was the first time I ever raised capital. $75,000 from 4 different people. We're all in a friends and family network. And that deal alone, I pushed it to $1.6 million in valuation in a year, and I was able to refinance that property. And that one property alone replaced my wife's income. So at that point in time, I was like, all right, I think this is my next step in terms of just scaling and pushing the envelope from there.
Okay. No, that's great. And what was your number at that for you was like, man, if I can just hit this number, I'm going to, be truly financially free?
Inflation adjusted. So it was 60 grand. It was 60
Okay.
grand. And here's another thing in terms of people that are out there that might be starting this journey or curious about this journey early on, is just keep your lifestyle expenses as low as possible. That shiny new car, that big house, that really fancy, expensive vacation, like it's not going to buy you better friends. And
For sure.
so, and the thing is that once you get used to those things, it's very hard to go back, right? I was talking about my, 1984 Chevy Blazer beater. It was a little bit rusted out, and that sort of thing. Well, that became like a Saab 9000. And then after that, it became a Nissan, a Nissan Altima. And then, and it's just like, you start off, spending, going to youth hostels with your friends when you're traveling to Europe. And then, then once you stay at a JW Marriott, like you can't go back from there. So it's just like slow that stuff down, because the amount of capital you end up saving and growing your balance sheet is going to be invaluable when you do that. And then you can just, splurge and be stupid with your money later on, but you never develop a habit of doing it. So we didn't have to have like a huge income in order to create that.
Yeah, no, that's great though. That's great. And it's great that you came in, quite a bit earlier than, what you were anticipating. But you're right. That's one person's income. Then now it becomes, how can I get my wife to be able to travel with me as well?
Mm-hmm.
So you bought your first office building, and then it sounds like a great deal. What did you do? Did you refinance that once you brought it up to the 1.6 million? Did you cash out some of the investors, or tell me a little bit about what that looked like?
Yeah, so this was a great first deal from a value add standpoint. There was no deferred maintenance of the property, maybe besides like some parking lots, sealing and striping and that sort of thing, just to enhance just like small curb appeal type of things. But all of the office suites in this building, it was all professional office, like pseudo medical type of thing, like therapists and hyperbaric oxygen therapy, like type of that type of thing. And the building was like 100% occupied for 20 years, and the ownership group I bought it from were they wore that as a badge of honor. And I looked at the rent roll. I did my homework in terms of having familiarity with office space, and I mean the rents in that building were 20 to 30% below market. So I went through and I started raising rents, not up to market on the tenants that were there, but spaces became available. I just increased the rents over that period. And so that's really how I did it. Kept expenses stabilized. I invested in some energy management tools, that sort of thing, because this is a co-tenanted multi-tenanted building. So I was paying for the utilities. So the former ownership group didn't have any of that type of technology. So just smart stuff like that to be able to juice the NOI. So I was able to increase the NOI, and I brought it back to the bank. They originally provided the purchase financing, and I said, "Hey, I'm ready to refinance this thing, and I'd like to pull out $300,000 some odd dollars because I created the value there." And so the cool thing that I learned at that time is that you can actually put a supplemental loan on the property, like a second mortgage behind the first mortgage, if you use the same bank that you use for the acquisition financing. So the advantage to that was I was able to keep the same amortization schedule on the first mortgage, so I can actually be paying down principal quicker on that first one and bring a second one in that also, that was a lower interest rate at the time. So I was able to blend the cost of capital a little bit down as well. So that's what I did.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have not heard of that, but it would make total sense if it's the same bank to be able to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. What and so from there, what did you buy after that?
So that was my first like sort of getting over the fear factor of doing non-residential multifamily deals. So I was like, okay, this thing scared the hell out of me, right? But I kind of had like, all right, well, it's been 100% occupied for 20 years, so what could possibly go wrong? That's what was able to for me to develop the confidence in actually doing the deal to begin with. And so when I saw the opportunity that there is a lot of value add potential in non-multifamily residential deals that a lot of people don't really even talk about. Multifamily is always going to be like the popular kid in the room. Everybody understands it and that sort of thing. But you take a mixed use building, right? There's a 28 unit building that I bought. I call it the fire breathing dragon because it was the most challenging deal in my life. But nobody wanted the deal because retail investors that wanted to buy retail product didn't want to deal with residential. Residential investors were scared as hell of having any retail or commercial non-residential exposure. So I kind of developed this niche in buying multifamily mixed use properties. And also I realized that I could actually kind of change the complexion of the neighborhood by stabilizing the residential, improving those, being able to bring in a higher quality workforce housing into the neighborhood, and then also reprogram the retail first floor, right? Where a lot of developers and owners would be looking at like chasing the highest buck that they could on a price per square foot basis. And in certain neighborhoods, the highest price per square foot might be a smoke shop, might be a pawn shop, might be a furniture rental place, like the one tenant that I ended up booting out was. So I was like, well, I'm making the money in the residential. I want the commercial retail to add value to the residential and also the adjacent parts of the neighborhood. So that was kind of like where I got bit by the bug on doing deals that has some sort of historic preservation component to it, as well as a positive social impact and community impact component to it.
Okay. So this particular one, maybe tell us a little bit about what was difficult about it, but just so I kind of understand, so the audience understands. So this is, when you say mixed use, it's a combination of two different types of real estate. So sounds like in this particular one, it was residential upstairs, which is pretty standard if it's going to be, retail on the bottom. But what was challenging about it?
Nearly everything was challenging about it. But I think the first thing was that it was a very, very challenging property. The code enforcement officers in the area had it nicknamed Little Shop of Horrors. All right. And so this was a problem property in terms of drug activity, just general blight, and just ill stuff like you just don't want in your neighborhood. Right. It was actually bringing the neighborhood down. So that was like that was the first challenge. I mean, I was walking through the property for the first time during due diligence and seeing somebody passed out in the hallway with a needle sticking out of their arm. And I was just like, damn, what the hell am I getting myself into? And I kept reminding myself, I was like, okay, this property is like 2 blocks away from my house. I have a vested interest in this deal, not only from a financial standpoint, but like it's gonna improve, help improve the neighborhood by kind of like taking this negative element out of the neighborhood. So that was the first challenge in terms of like getting those tenants out that weren't not adding value, but actually like bringing the neighborhood down. We were able to salvage some of the tenants that were paid their rent on time, didn't cause problems, had good housekeeping issues, that sort of thing. We pre-negotiated a renovated unit for them at a discounted rent. And when I started negotiating with these tenants, there's a local tenants union that got word of this developer coming in and mass evicting people out of this building. I mean, it was half full. It's a 26 residential units, 2 commercial storefronts. And before I knew it, I had people protesting outside the building. I was getting I was getting memed on social media by this tenants union people, saying that I should be damned ashamed of myself. Just like a lot of character assassination stuff that was happening. While me, I was like, I'm doing this in a responsible way and trying to create value in the neighborhood. So that was another challenge in that. And then just executing the actual renovation plan for the building. I mean, this was a building that was built in the late 1800s, and there was a lot of skeletons in the closet there that was uncovered during the renovation project in terms of plumbing and rotted floor joists and all this other stuff that we didn't account for. But I'm really glad that I over-raised on the cash we needed to do this, because if I didn't do that, I would have ran out of money quick. And there's no worse position to be in than going back to either your lenders or investment partners and like asking them for more money, because what you had projected to begin with was wrong. So it's like, well, you're projecting it again. Like, are you gonna be wrong again and be coming back to me? Like, is this project a sinking ship? So we're able to renovate through that building. I was able to reprogram the two tenant spaces there. One was a little crumpet shop. It was like essentially like an English bake shop, and then the other one became like a vintage clothing store. So that project's complete. Our total basis on that, I think, was 1.1 million, like 775 acquisition. The rest of it was rehab, and then that property also appraised for 1.8, 1.7, 1.8 million when we refinanced it. So we were able to pay everybody back.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, it's amazing as I hear you talking about the improvements, and it's really interesting to me just what kind of upsets people sometimes, not knowing the bigger picture of what you're doing with that property. And I get, limited information may allow people to kind of fall into that trap of saying, well, he's just mass evicting people. But at the end of the day, you're totally improving the property. What were some of the rent increases that you were able to do on that one? In other words, where were the rents when you first purchased it versus once you've rehabbed those?
So the residential units, there was some units that were as low as like $300 a month. So the range was like $300 to $500. We were able to raise those to between $800 and $1,100 a month. So they're like 50% below market in that deal.
Okay. And one of the things too that I see, just in some of the stuff that we do, which is mainly mobile home parks, but it's a lot of times these renovations and things that you're having to do are actually bringing it up to where it's a viable investment. If the rents are so low that a person cannot make a living, with that, or that it doesn't make financial sense to own it, there's no place for it to go but downhill, because they're not going to put money back into the property. So you end up getting a building that gets kind of left behind, or a property that gets kind of left behind. And, it ends up being a drag on the community instead of, something positive. But a lot of times it's just, just trying to bring it up to where it would actually make financial sense for an investor to own it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, profit is just another word for sustainability. And that's what I think like a lot of people don't understand. And and the thing is that there's what slumlords do is that most slumlords like have like low rents, right? And they have low rents, and what they do is they just extract from the property, and before you know it, it's like 5 years later, it's like a dried up husk. And so that's like the thing in terms of responsible experience and execution on it, is understanding that I hate to say this, but property owners are kind of like a money manager, right? Like they manage a budget. The tenant ends up paying for everything, right? They pay for vacancy and collection loss, they pay for repairs and maintenance, they pay for CapEx, like everything. And your job is to be a steward of that money and maintaining a high quality state of their housing, to allocate that money towards, okay, we have a certain cost associated with gross profit, for instance, to make it a sustainable return on investment. So then you can scale this thing and scale your works at the same time.
Yeah, I completely agree. It makes sense, and I think that sometimes gets missed a little bit. But yeah, it has to make sense for the property owner, and then and I think sometimes slumlords get into a situation where they don't feel like they can press the rents up, or maybe they're uncomfortable having that conversation, and then as repairs and things come up, they honestly just don't have the money for it in their mind, right? Because they're not managing the property the right way and putting aside money for those CapEx expenses and things. And so it gets to a spot where it just becomes really in bad shape, and that's not good for anybody. It's not good for the community or for the tenant base. So
agreed.
All right. So how about from there? What are some of the other ones that you've done to kind of get you up to where you're at that 176 units?
So there's a lot of deals in like between that one and this, and I guess I can talk about what we're doing right now.
Sure.
We've identified some interest and been assembling some properties in downtown Rochester, most namely around Four Corners in downtown Rochester, so on the west side of the Genesee River. And so we've assembled 3 properties. This is an area that got devastated by COVID. A lot of buildings that were serviced like the legal community because the court system is right nearby. We have like the Monroe County Hall of Justice and federal courts and all that stuff. And so we identified assets post COVID that were like, we're just getting fire sale prices on them because everybody hated office. So we assembled a few buildings that have historic value. Right now, I'm actually sitting in the building we bought a few years ago. It's called the Wilder Building. It's 11-story historic skyscraper. It was built in 1890, one of the first skyscrapers in the United States. And we're in the process. We're in the pre-development process of really conceptualizing what a unit mix is going to look like, and also programming amenities that are going to give the product a competitive advantage with attracting residents in downtown, because our downtown post COVID became like pitiful from a street level vitality standpoint. So sometimes people will look at our downtown as like glass half empty, and it might be, but I think that the balance in the glass there is potential. And so we're really working with a blank slate on this side of the river, because most of the investment has been focused on the east side. And so we're working through that. It's going to be a historic tax credit development project. We're going to need to. This is going to be a project that we're going to need multiple funding sources besides just investor equity and bank debt. So we're going to have tax credit equity as well as public dollars to get this thing over the finish line and redeveloped into residential. So that's what we're currently working on now in the pre-development process.
So that one's going to be all residential?
Residential up top, and then commercial on the first couple of floors. Retail on the first floor, and then some office on the second floor. There's a tax pilot program in New York State called 485A, and it requires you to retain a certain level of commercial use in your space because they want to encourage mixed use buildings.
Okay. And what was just curious on the acquisition side, what was the purchase price for one of the first skyscrapers?
So the Wilder building we're sitting in right now, we bought this building for $1.5 million. It's a 65,000 square foot building. You have an incredible amount of discount to replacement costs you can buy these buildings for downtown. But at the same time, people could literally give you these buildings for nothing, for $1, and you're still going to need to creatively put together multiple funding sources to reactivate them. So we have a good basis on it, and that one we had to raise private capital to take that deal down because it was 50% occupied. It was around COVID. It was office. Everybody hated office, so we had to raise $1.5 million from our investors. But we were able to take it from 50% occupancy up to 80% occupancy within a 12-month period.
That's great.
Just negotiating small, it's mostly smaller office, right? So 1-2 year leases with tenants. So we're able to increase the value from 1.5 to 3.125 million over that 12-month period. So we're able to refinance the property, put at least debt on it, and get some cash out to pay for soft costs associated with redeveloping the property, and also pay all our investors back on that deal. So right now we're kind of like in phase 2, and then when we start the actual shovels in the ground, or at least scheduling the shovels in the ground, we're going to coordinate with the tenants that are still in the building to relocate them, because we have relocation language in the leases to get them stacked down to the lower levels of the building, or relocate them to one of our other buildings downtown.
Okay. So that's the plan then, is just to so maybe bring them down and then rehab all the ones up, and then start releasing them at the higher rates. What about that tax benefit that you mentioned? Tell me a little bit about that. Have you done some of those in the past, and kind of how does that work, and when do those funds kind of come into the picture?
Yeah, so the historic tax credit program is a national program. There's a certain adoption level at the state level, which is mixed throughout the country. So essentially, there's so what the tax credit program does is it helps pay for renovation costs with a building that has historic value, right? So a building either has historic value because it's individually eligible, or it is part of it's a part of it's a contributing building to an actual nationally registered historic district. All right, so if it meets those two criteria, and also whatever the qualified rehabilitation expenses are for that building are called QREs, exceed your basis on the building, right? So you basically have to double your basis. So if we spend at least $1.5 million, then we're in the pocket for that. You can get up to 20% federal for qualified rehabilitation expenses. This is HVAC, drywall, elevators, mechanicals, everything you could possibly, windows, extra envelope with the building. So there's a ton of expenses that actually qualify in this. 20% federal. In New York State, it's 20% state for any project that is in excess of, I think, $2.5 million in QREs. If it's below $2.5 million QREs, it's 30% to give you a bonus for the smaller projects. So you can get up to 40% in the form of tax credit equity. Now, developers, we don't pay income tax. So why do we need tax credits? So they're pretty much useless to us. So what we do is we actually syndicate those tax credits out to financial institutions or investors that want to buy those tax credits at a discount to get the power of those tax credits against them. These could be higher earning individuals or banks, for instance. So they buy those, they become the tax equity investors and really make the deal happen.
Okay. And so are they getting any kind of preferred return on top of that, or is that just they're buying basically the tax credits?
They're basically buying the tax credits, so they get to use those over, I believe, 5 years against their income, and they're getting the juice based upon what they're buying at as a discount, right? It depends upon the market cycles, that sort of thing, but generally around between 80 and 90% you can expect in terms of proceeds for that. Now, at the end of the compliance period of 5 years, it depends upon what the negotiation is with the tax credit. Sometimes you have to pay them back. So you'll do what they originally bought them for. So you refinance the property, and then you pay you pay them back their principal at that point in time. So that's like one way the program can work, but there's a lot of different moving parts, and also depends upon the actual tax credit investor.
Okay. And so, but it essentially you do have to double your basis, similar to like an opportunity zone, where you're going to have to double that basis, but 40% of that can be through this program.
Yeah, and you can dovetail historic tax credit projects with the opportunity zone incentive too.
Oh wow! Okay,
so you can get both of the benefit both of those.
Okay, very interesting. And how far along are you with that particular project right now?
Not very far. We're in the conceptual part of the thing there. So we literally met with our architect last week to talk about just not even unit layouts, interior layouts, but like just in terms of how we're going to draw the demising walls for those units, and how we're going to affect the exterior envelope of the building as well, from life and safety standpoint in terms of second means of egress and all that stuff. So right now we're optimizing those sizes. Now we're going to go to actually test fitting individual units in terms of how they're going to lay out. So then we can have something to actually pro forma and develop like what the total package is going to look like. So then we can start presenting the deal to lenders and also our investment partners as well.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, very, very cool. And you hear, and so just one more question on that one. So on that one, it was all office initially, except for maybe some retail down below, or was it all apartments?
No, all office, retail on the first floor. Yep.
So you're having to put kitchens, plumbing, and all that into. I guess maybe some of them had some plumbing that you're able to still use if they had a bathroom within. Well, some office doesn't. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big project. It's gonna be about probably like a $25-30 million project. So
wow. Okay. Awesome. Are there some other developers that are on that side of the river as well? Or are you guys kind of, one of the first to kind of revitalize that particular part?
I'm laughing as you ask that. We would never be the first.
Okay.
My whole David Lindahl philosophy there is never be a pioneer, because pioneers wind up with their face down the mud and arrows in their back, right? So
Right.
we have a few projects that are right in our backyard that are like perfect proof of concept for us to model off of. Plus, part of our whole thesis with this is that we had a member of the S&P 500 relocate their global headquarters right directly behind our building, Constellation Brands. So that's a major cornerstone project that is helping build that momentum, and we're building that on that momentum. So yeah, if we didn't have that proof of concept, we wouldn't be the pioneers. We'd scrape until some other developer became the pioneer, and then see what happened to them.
Good idea. Good idea. Just figured I'd ask. So that's awesome. All right. So you're going to have your hands tied on this one for a while. How long do you think something like this is going to take from a project standpoint? Obviously, you're going to have to do the raise and all that once you get your ducks in a row. But what are you looking at as far as how long this is going to actually take?
From where we are to keys in the door is probably going to be the better part of 18 to 24 months. So
yeah,
maybe we'll talk then again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be great to hear another update on it. So
you'll see more gray hairs up here. So
I'm sure. Well, that's exciting though. That'll be neat. And I guess maybe tell us a little bit more how people can find out about you, Matt, and Oak Grove Development. Maybe if they want to track and follow what you guys are doing, if they want to invest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Our website is oakgrovecompanies.com. So that's OAKGROVE companies.com. I do a lot of just like free educational stuff out there. So definitely check out my YouTube channel. I have like a lot of like long form trainings on understanding, commercial versus residential appraisals and all these tricks that I've learned along the way, the hard way. Maybe sometimes multiple times. So I have all that in there. That's, but I'm omnipresent on social media. So, but YouTube channel is definitely the best way to actually, if you want to get some additional value, and check that stuff out.
Okay, perfect. Well, this has been great, Matt. I've enjoyed it, and it sounds like you're doing some really interesting things, and just an incredible story. Kind of coming from where you were when you grew up, and just your journey has been pretty neat to hear, and I'm sure the audience has gotten a lot of value out of it. I've got two more questions for you
Sure.
that I ask every guest. One would be just any advice you might give somebody who's just starting out in their investment journey.
Find a friend who's doing it and make friends with them. I mean, that's the number one most important thing I can possibly recommend. Podcasts are a great way to educate yourself. Books are, but it's just like you just can't like inundate yourself with content after content after content. You gotta get out there, and you'd be surprised at how many people, especially if you come from a standpoint of curiosity and interest, that people are willing to put the rope down for you and just kind of show you what they do and how they do it. And you don't have to do it exactly the same way as they did, but at least gives you the foundation and also the confidence to understand like this person is made out of the same flesh, blood, and bone that I am, and I can do it too.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. How about a book recommendation? It doesn't have to be real estate related, but it certainly can be. Just something that you've read that's been impactful.
Keith, truth be told, I barely read any real estate books. I'm living it. I'm like writing the book as I speak, right? So,
right.
The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say enough good things about that book. It's a parable. The entrepreneurship journey is a spiritual one, and it's definitely helped me a lot in terms of a lot of the challenges I've faced too. So it's an incredible read. Short one too.
Yeah, very good one. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, Matt, this has been great, man. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for being on the Wealth Flow.
All right, peace. Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, thank you.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.